The Silent Watcher, the town of Grey Hollow, was a place where secrets whispered through the cracks of old wooden homes, carried on the cold, misty air that blanketed the streets each night. Among its many tales of dread and despair, one name rose above the rest: the Silent Watcher. It began years ago, when the young and ambitious Edith Grayson moved to Grey Hollow to document its folklore. She was drawn to its eerie reputation, a haven for those seeking the macabre. The townsfolk, however, were reluctant to speak openly about the Silent Watcher, a shadowy figure said to appear on moonless nights, always standing, always watching. Edith rented a decrepit cottage on the outskirts of the town, its windows perpetually fogged as if the house itself was trying to obscure its view of the outside world. Her research quickly consumed her, poring over faded newspaper clippings and old journals. Each reference to the Silent Watcher was vague, but consistent: a dark silhouette with glowing eyes, always seen from a distance, never moving, but always closer the next time you looked. One chilly evening, Edith found herself at the town's small library, buried in the archives. She unearthed an account from 1893, written by a local farmer named Thomas Hensley. "Saw it again last night," the journal entry read. "Just beyond the tree line. A figure, tall, unnaturally still. Could feel it watching me, even from the corner of my eye. Next morning, my livestock were all dead, their eyes open wide in terror." Edith shuddered and glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. She gathered her notes and left the library, the sound of her boots echoing through the empty streets. The air was damp, the kind of chill that seeped into your bones. As she neared her cottage, a strange sensation prickled at her neck, as if she were being watched. She turned, but the road behind her was empty. The first sighting happened 3 nights later. Edith was in her living room, typing her notes by candlelight when the power went out. The sudden darkness unsettled her, but she chalked it up to the old wiring. Lighting another candle, she moved to the window to look outside. That's when she saw it. At the edge of the woods, barely visible through the swirling mist, stood a figure. It was tall and slender, cloaked in shadows that seemed to writhe around it. Its eyes glowed faintly, like embers in a dying fire. Edith froze, unable to tear her gaze away. The figure didn't move, didn't approach. It simply stood there, staring back. The next morning, Edith tried to rationalize what she had seen. Perhaps it was a trick of the light or her overactive imagination. But deep down, she knew better. The air in her cottage felt heavier now, as if she were never truly alone. She decided to question the locals again, hoping for answers. "Best leave it be," warned an elderly shopkeeper when Edith broached the topic. "The Silent Watcher don't like attention. Folks who notice it too much, they don't last long." "What do you mean?" Edith pressed, but the woman only shook her head and muttered a prayer under her breath. That night, Edith bolted her doors and windows, though she doubted it would help. She set up a camera facing the woods and left it recording while she slept. Or tried to sleep. The oppressive silence was broken only by the occasional creak of the house settling and the rustle of leaves outside. When she reviewed the footage the next morning, her blood ran cold. At 3:17 a.m., the camera caught the figure stepping out from the tree line. It didn't walk, but glided closer, stopping just short of her porch. Its head tilted ever so slightly, as if studying the camera, before retreating back into the shadows. Days turned into a nightmare. Edith began seeing the figure more frequently, always just at the edge of her vision. It appeared in reflections, in windows, in the distance when she dared venture into town. The locals avoided her now, their gazes filled with pity and fear. One night, unable to bear the suffocating dread, Edith decided to confront the silent watcher. Armed with a flashlight and a trembling resolve, she stepped into the night. The mist swallowed her almost immediately, muting every sound but the crunch of her boots on the damp ground. "What do you want?" she called into the darkness, her voice quivering. Silence. She swung the flashlight around, the beam slicing through the fog. Then she saw it closer than ever before. The figure loomed just a few yards away, its glowing eyes fixed on her. Edith's breath hitched as an overwhelming sense of despair washed over her. She couldn't move, couldn't look away. The figure raised an arm, impossibly long and thin, and pointed at her. A deafening roar erupted around her, though her ears registered no sound. The world spun, and she collapsed to the ground. Edith was found days later by a search party, lying unconscious near the woods. She was pale, emaciated, and unresponsive. When she finally awoke in the hospital, she spoke only in whispers, her voice hollow and distant. "It's always watching," she murmured. "It never stops. Even now, it's here." Edith left Gray Hollow shortly after her release, abandoning her research and the cottage. But the town's whispers grew louder. New sightings of the silent watcher began to surface, closer and more frequent. The legend lives on, and some say the silent watcher grows bolder with each passing year. If you find yourself in Gray Hollow on a moonless night, beware the glowing eyes in the mist. For once you see it, the silent watcher sees you too, and it never forgets.